All right, welcome back in. It's the MMQB podcast, YouTube edition. We're going to do what we've done the last few weeks. I appreciate everybody who's come out and joined us on Periscope and on YouTube. We are up now. My producer tells me we had a little bit of a miscue there a second ago, but we are up now on Twitter, on Periscope, and this will be up on YouTube in a little bit. Just to explain to you guys what we're doing here, we want to give you a more professional-looking version of this, which will be up Tuesday afternoons after we do this if you can't get out for our Periscope. Now, of course, we want you guys to come out for the Periscope so I can answer all of your questions, but if you can't get there, the YouTube is a good place to go and see what we're talking about. My leadoff thought for the week, we're going to spend a lot of time over the next few days breaking down the conference championship games, and one thing that really stuck out to me was the juxtaposition of the quarterbacks. You have a 41-year-old, you have a 40-year-old, you have a 24-year-old, you have a 23-year-old, okay? The 23-year-old and the 24-year-old were both drafted in the top 10. In fact, in both cases, the team that got them wound up trading up for them, spending a massive amount of draft capital to go up and get them. On the other hand, you got the New England Patriots, who got their quarterback in the 6th round of the 2000 draft, and then you have the New Orleans Saints, who not only did Drew Brees go in the 2nd round, but the Saints were able to sign him because he was hurt. And so I thought it'd be interesting to look at how quarterbacks slip through the cracks. And so I did a chart. I looked at all the and you guys can see all the work right here. Did a big chart, looked at the age of the quarterbacks and their draft position. And here's what's fascinating about it. Okay. 23 of the 32 quarterbacks in the first, 23 of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL were drafted in the 1st round. Okay, 9 outliers. The 9 guys who weren't drafted in the 1st round, 6 are 30 or older. That means there are just 3 quarterbacks who are under 30 and were not drafted in the 1st round and are starting right now. One's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a 2nd-round pick. Easy to explain that one. He was coming out of Eastern Illinois. Another one is Derek Carr. He was a 2nd-round pick. I think part of that circumstantial, kind of the effect that his brother's career had on him. And then the real outlier here is Dak Prescott, who's a 4th-round pick playing out of the SEC. So what does this tell us? To me, my big takeaway from that is that if Drew Brees were coming out now, as he came out in 2001, coming out of Purdue, there is almost no shot that he would have been drafted anywhere but the top 10 picks. He's a great player in college, just a little short. But the way we value quarterbacks now, I don't think there's any way that Drew Brees would last until a 32nd pick, which is where he went, top of the 2nd round in 2001. On top of that, I think there's probably a lot less of a chance that Tom Brady would slip like Tom Brady slipped. Like, I don't think you're going to see quarterbacks sliding through the cracks like that. So again, the outliers here, most of them are older. And that tells me there's less chance that these guys are going to slip through the cracks, and you have to invest to go and get one. And that's why I think if you look at this year's draft class, even though it's not as highly thought of as the 2018 class that had Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson in it, you're going to see guys get pushed up the board. You're going to see Dwayne Haskins get pushed up the board. You're going to see Daniel Jones get pushed up the board. Potentially, you could see Kyler Murray get pushed up the board. And so I just thought it was interesting. My leadoff thought for today, you look at the 4 teams, the 4 quarterbacks, and you see guys from different generations. On one side, Tom Brady, 6th-round pick, and Drew Brees, 2nd-round pick. On the other side, Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes, guys drafted in the top 10. Their teams traded up to get them. And so I think the big takeaway there is how much the way we value quarterbacks has changed, how quarterbacks being developed has changed, how there's less of a chance that quarterbacks slip through the cracks now, and how if you're a team that needs one, you're almost going to have to spend a 1st-round pick. All right, I'm going to hit 5 news topics, and then we're going to get out of here. I want to give you guys my quick take on each of these. Topic number 1, this is going to be a very interesting one over the next 3 months. Kyler Murray declared for the NFL draft on Monday. This was expected. I can tell you this is largely procedural. This kid is absolutely playing his cards right. He has all the leverage right now. He is using it. He is going and he's basically using his football ability against his baseball earning power. And that is a brilliant move. So he's got the $5 million in his pocket. Now he's trying to get more out of the A's. I've heard that he likes playing football more. Obviously, there's the injury risk that doesn't, that isn't there in baseball. In baseball, the money could be bigger down the line, but it's going to take him a while to get there. In football, of course, there's not a lot of history of players like him, like of his build, 5'9", 175 pounds, making it at the quarterback position. So there are a lot of moving parts here. Really, to me, the landscape, if you guys want it, all right. One, I have not talked to a single scout who thinks he's a first-round pick. Doesn't mean he's not going to go in the first round. That dynamic we talked about off the top of the show certainly exists here. Most of the people I've talked to think he's a Friday pick. That means round 2 or round 3. Now, the caveat there is there are lots of guys that were thought of as second-round picks going into the process who've been pushed up into the first round at that position. That's why if you look over the last 4 years, there have been 13 first-round quarterbacks and just 2 second-round quarterbacks. Guys don't go in the second round because this becomes a yes or no question. And if you think the guy is going to be a long-term answer for you at quarterback, if your answer to the question is yes, then you don't wait till a second round to take him. And if the answer is no, you don't take him in the second round. You wait till later to take a guy who maybe you'd see as a fill-in starter or a backup type. And so that dynamic, I think, could push Kyler Murray into the first round. But right now, I'm having trouble finding a lot of people who consider him a first-round prospect. That's largely because of his size, something he can't really help. He's about 5'9". Teams think that he's going to weigh about 170, 175 pounds at the combine. Number 2. And this was really, really interesting to me. We look at the divisional playoffs. What was the biggest difference look at the biggest common difference in those games? It's actually not quarterback play. It's not defense. It's how well the teams ran the ball. How well the teams that won those games ran the ball. Okay? And in every case, the difference on the ground was significant. The Chiefs outrushed the Colts 180-87. The Rams outrushed the Cowboys 273-50. The Patriots outrushed the Chargers 155-19. And the Saints outrushed the Eagles 137-49. So what that tells me, teams that are investing up front and their offensive lines are winning. You can win with different kinds of running backs, okay? The Patriots have a first-round pick at running back now. The Chiefs have a guy who they signed 10 minutes ago. The Rams did it with both a first-round pick and a guy they signed 10 minutes ago. And the Saints have invested in the position with Mark Ingram, who was a first-round pick, and Alvin Kamara. And so I just think it was fascinating to look at those numbers. And in every one of those cases but one, the difference was 100 yards, at least 100 yards. And the one that wasn't, it was close. It was like 93 yards that the Chiefs outrushed the Colts by. Being able to run the ball allows you to control the game. It makes things easier on your quarterback. It alleviates some of the pressure on your defense because you're slowing the game down a little bit. Still a game about blocking and tackling, folks. And I think these rushing numbers definitely illustrate who's blocking and who's tackling. Okay, number 3, the coaching carousel at the head coaching level is done. We've got 8 new head coaches, and 6 of them are on the offensive side of the ball. It's Cliff Kingsbury, Freddie Kitchens, Zach Taylor, Bruce Arians, Adam Gase, and Matt LaFleur. 5 of those 6, I believe, will be calling plays. Arians says he isn't. I don't know if I totally believe that. Like, he says he's going to give it to Byron Leftwich. I don't know if I totally believe that Arians isn't going to be in there calling plays when we get to September. But to me, like, the bottom line here, right? Like, the bottom line here is that teams, I think teams look at the model. They see 3 of the 4 head coaches that are still in the playoffs are play calling offensive head coaches, right? And I think the other element of this is there's entertainment value in having that sort of like I think a lot of owners looked at Chiefs Rams in November, watching it sitting on their couch and like point at the TV like, I want that. Like, give me that. And so I think there's the trend that like it's working. It's working to some degree in a lot of different places. And I think that the other side of it is the entertainment value, which the owners really want, because it's harder to draw a rating than it used to be. It's harder to draw fans to the stadium than it used to be. And so I wouldn't underrate that little piece of it, right? And that'll spill right into topic number 4, which is McVay Mania, right? So LaFleur is a McVay assistant, former McVay assistant. Zach Taylor is a current McVay assistant. Cliff Kingsbury, as the Cardinals let us know in their release, he is a McVay friend. So what I want to give you guys here is what I think you can learn from the McVay hire, which goes against all of these hires. The Rams were looking where other teams weren't when they hired Sean McVay. They were looking at a 30-year-old, right? How do you look where where everybody else isn't looking? Because that's probably where you're going to find something, right? So the Rams and the Niners, the way that all went down, the Rams brought him in for an interview, got the first crack at him. He blew him away. He had one other interview. Now, there were, I think, 7 openings in 2017. He had only one other interview. That was with the Niners. So flies up to San Francisco, knocks that one out of the park too. And word got back to the Rams of how well he did with the Niners. So then the Rams get him back to L.A., and they basically kidnap him for 2 days. And they aren't going to let him go until he accepts the job. Okay? The bottom line is the Niners and the Rams were looking at a coach who most people thought was too young, who most people thought wasn't ready. They brought him in. They were looking where other teams weren't looking, and bingo, they got it. And so now they have Sean McVay, the original Sean McVay, not the next Sean McVay, the original Sean McVay. And so I think what you can learn is you don't always look don't look where everybody's looking, okay? Because if you look where everybody's looking, chances are, like, a couple of those aren't going to work out. A couple of those we're going to look at in a couple of years, and we're going to say that was a result of overreaching for the next one. And maybe 1 or 2 of these is a home run. Chances are all of them won't be. And so I think the biggest thing to learn from it, if you actually look at hiring McVay rather than the result of it, right? Like, if you look at the process of hiring McVay, and the biggest thing we can take is, I mean, look, and he's so much more than a play caller, right? Like, he's so much more than that. He's a program leader. He's a culture builder, all that stuff. I think the biggest thing to learn from McVay and the hire of McVay is to look where other people aren't looking, is to look at how the Rams got to a 30-year-old offensive coordinator of a non-playoff team. You can learn something. It's not generally finding the next one that serves you well. It's finding the first of something. You know, it's like college football's been looking for the next Nick Saban forever. Dabo Swinney is not the next Nick Saban. That's the first Dabo. And so I think the idea here, the biggest thing I think we can take from all of this mania over Sean McVay, if we actually look back to the hire in 2017, look where other people aren't looking. Finally, number 5, and this is something I want to hit again. I think that is so important. And it's Andy Reid and the Chiefs going to the conference title game. It's the Chiefs' first time in this first time in the AFC title game in 25 years. First time it's ever been held at Arrowhead. And it's Andy Reid's 6th, I believe, trip to the conference championship round as a head coach. How do you get back there? Andy Reid reinvented himself. Andy Reid got fired in Philly, and he reinvented himself. And he made himself, he put himself on the level of, put himself back like basically where he was in 1999 when he first became a head coach, and said, what can I take from the college game? How can I reset the organization? How can I reset the way I view an organization and do things a little bit differently? Like, how do I actually go about figuring out what went wrong? It's the power of reinventing yourself. And I remember talking to Sean Payton about this, and he openly admitted to me, like, yeah, well, you know, that there are 7 or 8 coaches where I have to watch their tape every week, and he's like literally stealing stuff from them. And Sean Payton's constantly reinventing himself. Like, I think Taysom Hill is a good example of it. Like, it's an idea that sort of comes out of nowhere, you know? And so I think seeing Andy Reid, seeing Sean Payton, seeing Bill Belichick too, seeing these guys, and McVay, of course, is the outlier there, seeing these guys in the conference championship round, it's the power of being able to reinvent yourself constantly. It's the power of never never feeling like you arrived. Because, look, I mean, again, Reid's been to 6 conference title games, been a head coach in the league. This is his 20th year as a head coach in the NFL. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time. 5 championship rings. Sean Payton has a Super Bowl championship, and all of those guys are constantly reinventing themselves. Okay, I appreciate you guys coming out. I want your feedback always. You can get to me on Twitter at Albert Breer, on Facebook at Albert R. Breer, on Instagram at Albert_Breer. We want to continue to grow this. Me and Will are having fun with it. We're going to put it back up on YouTube again. You can check that out later on Tuesday. All your feedback is welcome. We want it. Give it to us, and we'll continue to adjust this as we get through the playoffs and then to free agency and closer to the draft. I want this to be sort of a hub for you guys to come in and be able to interact with me and also get the information that you want to get out of it. Appreciate you guys coming out. I'll see you next week.